Hello everyone, welcome back to Powerful Nothing, a Magic the Gathering Cube podcast. I'm your host Dan, better known on the internet as Too Sweet MTG, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host James. James, how are you doing? Are you well?
I'm well. It is new set time in Cube Land, so that's very exciting. We have many new Magic cards to talk about from a universe I don't understand, but they seem like cool cards.
I'm trying to work out how you can have like 18 final of some things, but never mind. Today, we're doing our Cube set review for the Final Fantasy set. There's a lot of cool cards for us to talk about today, and there's cards for a bunch of different cubes as well. While for myself, anyway, I'm not the biggest Final Fantasy fan, at the end of the day, from any Magic set, what I want is cool cube cards, and we do have a bunch of cool ones to talk about today. From experience with other Universes Beyond sets, they've generally done a really good job at top-down design. So hopefully for the fans of Final Fantasy, there's a lot of cool cards that kind of really sit with you. In terms of how we're looking at cards today, we're just going to be looking at the cards as cards for Cube. The flavor won't come into it too much. We're not building a set Cube in today's episode.
Yeah, for sure. I think I know from fans who are into Final Fantasy, it sounds like the flavor really is hitting with these cards, which is great to hear. If they're going to do Universe Beyond stuff, you obviously want the flavor to work. That's kind of the point. But we're very much going to be focusing on how the cards will play out in Cube in this set review.
Yeah, 100%. So when we are talking about cards today, we are going to be comparing them to every other card that's ever been printed in the history of Magic and the history of Universes Beyond as well. So if we don't mention a card, that doesn't mean that it's bad and you're bad for running it in your cube. It's just that we don't think it's going to find a place in the majority of cubes out there. In terms of those cubes, let's break down how we're going to be talking about cards and probably the types of cubes out there. When we talk about cubes, it's normally in terms of things like power level, restriction, and size. For power level, we're basically trying to describe the pool of cards the rest of the cube is going to be picked from. So an entry-level cube we often describe as low-powered or budget. There's a lot of cool cards that you might run, but generally they're looking for fun games rather than doing broken things really, really quickly. Think of these as somewhere between like a regular set draft and like a Masters set. You then have your mid-powered level cubes. The games are getting a little faster. There's better fixing. You start seeing more staple cards from a lot of formats, things like Lightning Bolt, Counterspell. Maybe we start seeing fetch lands. Previously, these might have been known as standard, modern, or legacy cubes. You then have the real high-powered cubes. They're generally environments that are optimized to run the best cards possible. The games are powerful and the decks need to be more focused, and you have to be doing a thing. Also, in terms of speed, if you go land go, you probably lost that game. The best example of a high-powered level cube that most people will know is the Mitgo or Modo Vintage Cube. James, you also have a powered cube, so if you mention cards that's kind of power level for your cube, that's kind of where we're talking about. For what it's worth, I also have two cubes. I have an unpowered Vintage Cube, which runs all the broken cards that you get with a Vintage Cube, but doesn't have like the power. My other cube is also a slower, go bigger cube, kind of like the Live the Dream cube on Modo. So we might talk about cards that go in our cubes just because one of the cool things about this kind of set review is we are talking about cards that interest us, but not just our cubes, but also for a wide variety of cubes as well. When it comes to restrictions, the most common that you find are Pauper, which is a cube using only commons, and Peasant, which is a cube using only commons and uncommons. There are others, but they won't really have an effect on our set review. Obviously, if you're building a thematic Final Fantasy cube, then most of the cards will be open for you, but we're looking at cards that kind of go into the types of cubes you see more regularly. In terms of size, the general idea is that with smaller cubes, the average card quality is higher, like in a 360 cube. Whereas with larger cubes like 540 or 720, there is room for less optimal bits. You're often looking for duplicate of effects as well. So if we say a card could see play in a 720 cube, it probably means there are cards that do something similar that might already see play in cube, but you can run this in a larger cube where there is more room and you might want an extra version of that effect. So one thing to actually just mention before we kind of go into this set is that originally this set, I believe, was going to be designed as a modern set in the way that like Lord of the Rings was. But this is like the actual main set of this is a standard legal set. So kind of expect that from the power level of a lot of the cards we're going to be talking about today. But because there is also the commander precons attached to this, there is definitely a bit of a power spike in some of the commander cards. So today we're going to be talking about both the standard set and also the commander product that comes with it as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think they seem to have done, I'd say on first impression, a pretty good job of shifting most of the cards in this main set down to standard power level. There's nothing that jumped out at me as this is way too busted to be in a normal standard set, which means that I think a lot of the the most powerful cards we're going to be talking about for Cube here are in that commander set. But hey, that's a good thing about getting commander sets, right? It gives us, it means we get a little bit more, a few more interesting cards for Cube in standard sets, which is nice.
And it also means this set review is 1 episode rather than the 5 we did for Modern Horizons 3, which...
I mean, we're not doing that again. I don't care how many Modern Horizons sets.
We made a mistake. I will admit that was on me. We made a mistake on that. But anyway, there's a lot of cool cards to get through today. James, do you want to kick us off with white? What do you think of Champions from Beyond?
Yeah, Champions from Beyond is X white for an enchantment. Says when this enchantment enters, you create X 1/1 colorless hero creature tokens. And it has 2 static abilities. It has Light Party. Whenever you attack with 4 or more creatures, scry 2, then draw a card. And it has Full Party. Whenever you attack with 8 or more creatures, those creatures get +4/+4 until end of turn. I think of the cards we're talking about today, this is one of the ones I'm a bit lower on. The way I see this, I think as just as a token generator, it's just not quite efficient enough. I understand not everything has to be for Failingus, but like this is half as much power and toughness as you get from Finale of Glory, and that card's not exactly tearing up any trees, you know? So it really needs to get some of the juice from these two triggered abilities it has on the card. And for me, these readers pretty win more. Like most of the time when you're attacking with 4 creatures and it's not a horrible attack, you're probably winning that game anyway. When you're attacking with 8 creatures, your opponent's almost always dead regardless. I just don't see these abilities being impactful enough in games where you're either at parity or behind for them to really justify putting this card in your deck. Like, I don't know what value of X you're happy. Like, for 4 mana, you're getting 2 1/1s. For 5 mana, you're getting 3 1/1s. I'm just not happy about any of these deals, you know? Honestly, the time I could see this being most impactful is like maybe you already have a really big board, you play this for 2 mana, play a removal spell, and swing with a bunch of stuff. But again, did you need for help in that game? Was this that much better than just having like a 4 or 5 mana creature? No?
No, I would agree with that. This is definitely one for slower cubes. Kind of like for me, this is either a 2-drop where you're playing X is 0, or it's like a 6 to 10 drop or something like that. Like this doesn't really like. One of the things with X spells that is normally quite nice is that they are quite flexible. Like you can play them at different points in the curve. Whereas this, you're either playing it for two white for a reason, or you are pumping a bunch of mana into it later. I think it's I could see myself testing this in my slower cube, but just purely because it is nice that kind of like it is an X spell that kind of does give you something extra. It's not just making bodies. I think there is room for these spells that aren't Fourth Airlingus, because Fourth Airlingus is a nuts magic card that I think should just be in the highest level of cubes. There is room for some below that, but yeah, I think as you mentioned, kind of like Finale of Glory makes 2/2s, which is double the power of this, and also I have Secure the Waste, which is an instant and 1 white cheaper. I think if you're just looking for something with a bit more interesting of an effect, then I think you could test this. It is also an enchantment, so there might be some kind of synergy there. But yeah, generally speaking, not super high on this one, but I did think it was worth mentioning because it is. I do like these kind of token makers. I do think are solid. There is room for at least one in the cube. Like they're good in like a go white tokens deck. They're good in aristocrats. But yeah, I do concede that kind of like if you already have 8 creatures, then you've probably won.
Yeah, for sure. And in that scenario, right, you're not comparing this to what happened if you drew a blank instead of this, right? It's like, what happens if you drew like any other like 4 or 5 mana threat instead of this? Like that's, if you have good attacks with a bunch of creatures, you're already ahead, you play a reasonable standalone threat, that's going to win you the game, right? Like, whereas this is just, because it's doing so little when you're behind or at parity, I think it doesn't quite justify its slot. Yeah, I'd rather have like, yeah, say Secure the Wastes, Finale of Glory. I think these are stronger cards on their own.
That's fair. Like I do like the idea of a token maker that's also an anthem effect, but I just think, yeah, with this, it's just both halves are just too unoptimal. Is that the right word?
Yeah, like the amount of attackers you need is just a bit too high, right? Like if it was 3 attackers and 6 attackers, then it's like maybe you could get there, right?
Yeah.
But if 4 and 8 just feels like a bit too many.
100%. All right, let's keep it going. Next up, we have Cloud's Limit Break. This is 1 and a white for an instant with Tiered, which is a new mechanic, but it's basically Kicker, so you all know how it works. So with Tiered, when you cast a spell, you can pay 1 additional cost. So you can pay 0, so 1 and a white, and 0 for Cross Clash, destroy target tapped creature. You have Blade Beam, which is an additional colorless, to destroy any number of target tapped creatures with different controllers. For the benefits of one-on-one, we're going to be ignoring that line of text. And you have Omni Slash, which is 3 and a white, to destroy all tapped creatures. So I do like this sort of effect. Again, this is not one for cubes where Swords to Plowshares or Path to Exile are kind of like gold standard premium bits of removal. But again, in slower cubes, I think this is a cool flexible spell. It's like a 2-mana Ambush effect or a 6-mana Settle the Wreckage. And I think that's okay. Like we had Final Showdown in Outlaws of Thunder Junction, which is either a protection spell or an instant speed board wipe. I've been impressed with that card in my slower cube. I do like having that kind of interaction, which isn't as miserable as Secure the Wastes. So in slower cubes, I think this could be a pretty solid test, basically. Like if you're fine with a 2-mana removal spell or a 6-mana instant speed board wipe, then it's decent. It's flexible. I think it'll be a solid Magic card.
Yeah, for sure. I think like 90% of the time when you cast this, it's just going to be the 2-mana destroy target tapped creature, right? Which we have a couple of already. But the upside of this one is sometimes you get a Settle the Wreckage when you draw it late game, and that's kind of nice. It's part of whether to include this card is a design decision about just who you want your removal spells to work for, because this is very explicitly for a controlling deck. Any sort of remotely aggressive deck is not going to be interested in this just because it can never get a blocker out of the way, right? It's only working once they've attacked you with their creatures, which can also lead to some awkwardness when they just have creatures that are doing things outside of combat, right? And they don't attack you, and this doesn't answer them. So yeah, certainly not one for high power level cubes, but if you're running some of the destroy tapped creature stuff already, this is kind of a nice upgrade because, like that 6-mana mode is very real, like especially in a slow cube, that will win you some games.
Yeah, I think I'm going to test this in my slower cube, and I think I'm just going to scribble out the middle ability.
You could do something. You can. Here's what you do, right? You threaten their creature. Act of treason, hit them with it, and then you destroy. Yeah, no, that's not going to come up. But you know, I'm sure you could find something.
Nice. All right. Well, we're going a bit more iconic now. I at least know who this character is, James.
I actually don't, but
do you not? This is like there's like 2 characters I know who they are, and this is one of them.
I've seen the giant sword. I have seen the giant sword.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
He's in Smash Bros. That's where you might know him from.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. Okay. Next up, we have Cloud Midgar Mercenary. This is white for a 2/1 legendary creature human soldier mercenary. Says when Cloud enters, search your library for an equipment card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. And as long as Cloud is equipped, if an ability of Cloud or an equipment attached to it triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. So see like a bit of an equipment build around here. Equipment decks are an interesting spot in Cube. They've kind of historically struggled a little bit just because it's tricky to end up in a spot where you have enough equipment to make all your equipment build around stuff work and have enough creatures to attach that equipment to and still have a functional deck with some interactions, some removal spells, and all the other things you need. I think it has improved quite a lot recently, though, just because they've printed a lot of equipment which is kind of fake equipment. Like you don't actually need to attach it to anything. Stuff like Corey Steelcutter in the last set, I think that card works very well in Cube, as well as every constructed format under the sun. Also stuff like Chainsaw, which is just like a pretty reasonable removal spell. Glimmer Lens is a of a creature of equipment that brings a creature with it. We've had quite a few of those. There's more in this set. I think that stuff is actually what makes the equipment deck work. Because they're all just fine cards on their own, right? So it also means you don't have to dedicate 1 million slots in your cube to a bunch of janky equipment that only one quite narrow archetype is going to use. You can just have a decent number of equipment in your cube naturally. Plus, this is kind of an equipment build around which doesn't require you to have like 8 equipment in your deck, right? You just need to have like something
the one
good
one.
Yeah. Like I think ideally you'd have like 3 or 4, and there are ones that are good in different spots, right? You don't want like 3 and they're all sort of X and Y, because sometimes you don't have enough mana to do that, you know?
It's 2025, James. When we're not running
if you have,
X and Y.
but you know, if you exactly. But you run this, you have like one really good one. Say you have like a skull clamp, and then you have a glimmer lens and a chainsaw and a steel cutter or something. Like, I think that's enough to justify this card. And the triggered thing is pretty nice. That'll come up at times. You can search out skull clamp this, and it will draw 4 cards. That's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Plus, and I think mostly this is just like a nice little value creature if you have a decent number of equipment in your deck. Not one that's going in like ultra high level cubes, but I think like pretty reasonable in anything beyond that if you have a decent number of equipment.
I think that's fair. I think my issue has always been with the equipment archetype is that it just never come together for me. And like I agree with everything you said in terms of just like running some good equipment, but like the other way that the deck's been trying to tackle, or like the designers have been trying to tackle how to make equipment work in limited, is by making exploring the equipment that are also creatures. So like the reconfigure creatures, the Famiridon, like there's job select in this, which I will give out on a little bit later. But like those don't work with this because it doesn't like make you 2 tokens, because it has to be equipped to this to get the double up. So that it is. So while I think Cloud is cool, it is kind of like it's taking an archetype that didn't really have enough support and bits down a different direction to where some of it was already going, which I think is a bit tricky. Where we kind of see equipment generally in most groups as like an equipment package normally revolves around like cheating, like stone forging for the big things, and this doesn't. Like, yes, this can find your Batterskull or your Culture Complete, but doesn't let you cheat it into play the same way that Stoneforge kind of does.
Yeah, for sure. I guess I just don't think you need to get that much mileage out of the extra triggers bit. Like a 2-mana 2/1 that draws a card is kind of already decent, right? And this is presumably slightly better than draw a card because it's giving you some choice. So I think I'm more seeing the extra triggers bit as a bonus. Honestly, my main issue with this card is just that it's double white.
If it was tough.
Yeah. If it was 1 white, I'd actually be pretty into this. But I think white just
it's
white on a 2-drop is really rough. Like, you're just in a 2-color deck, you're just not going to be able to reliably cast it on turn 2. Which, I mean, isn't the end of the world. Like, it's still, a perfectly acceptable play on turn 4 or whatever. But it does definitely take it down a notch.
No, I'd agree with that. I like. It is also a card that could get better in the future if there is any like equipment based combos that get printed. Something to consider for the future. Like, this is a tutor for any equipment. None immediately spring to mind that aren't like 3 or 4 card Rube Goldberg machines. But there will be equipment based combos. But yeah, I think you're probably on the right lines, James. Of just use it to get good, cheap, efficient equipment like the Corey Steel Cutter, and just equip it to this and start swinging. Like, that's probably where this is going to be most efficient. I think maybe I was getting a bit too fancy with it, but hey ho. Right, let's move on. Next up, we have another new card type. Next up, we're talking about Summon Knights of the Round. This is 6 white for a enchantment creature Saga Knight. It is an indestructible 3/3. Because it's a saga, it also has lore counters. So if this is chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4 create 3 2/2 white knight creature tokens. So think of the first one like an ETB. Effectively, it'll come in and the first one will trigger because it's a saga. The 5th chapter on this is Ultimate End. Other creatures you control get +2/+2 until end of turn. Put an indestructible counter on each of them. And then importantly, because this is a saga, it will sacrifice, even though it's a creature, as the 5th chapter goes off. So, firstly, I do want to talk about summons a little bit, James. We have a bit of a chat about them before we kind of talk about this card specifically. So, yeah, as I mentioned, these are sacrificed as the last chapter goes off, and they also have summoning sickness. So if you want to attack with them, you only get to do that on the middle chapters, or they need to have haste. So just in generally, the way I'm looking at these anyway, I don't know how you are, but like if there's only 3 chapters, I'm out immediately because they come in on 1, they attack on 2, and they sacrifice on 3, so you can't attack. So like, yes, you can block twice, but like this is an 8-mana spell. Like most of the summons are costed like beefy creatures. There isn't really any like they're not undercosted for their effect. They are costed for their stats most of the time. I think summons are cool, and there is a couple of very powerful ones. But kind of like, what's your initial thought on this? Because effectively, this is a new card type.
Yeah, I quite like them. I think the amount of chapters just informs how much you're caring about the actual body the card is giving you. So this, right, is sticking around, because it has 5 chapters, it's sticking around long enough that I don't really care about sacrifice. Like,
yeah.
But by the time the 5th chapter goes off, I assume I'm winning the game, to be honest. So I don't really see it as a downside. But yeah, if you're excited about the body, but it has 3 chapters and doesn't have haste, well, you're only getting to attack that once. So you really need more value off the effects rather than just the body of the creature in that scenario. But yeah, I kind of like them as a card type in that I think they will lead to interesting gameplay decisions about when you want to trade off the saga as a creature, or do you want to keep it around so that you get the subsequent chapters of it. Yeah, I think it's an interesting direction to take sagas. I know I'm waiting to see how they play, but I'm not opposed to it. And I really like sagas in general. I think they tend to play really well. So I think I'm kind of here for a new twist on sagas.
No, I'd agree. They're kind of like fixed planeswalkers, but like a couple of other bits with these as well. Actually, before we actually again get back to this card, apologies. But like because they are enchantments, they do work with things like Academy Rector, which is cool. They can work with cards like Replenish that bring all your enchantments back into play. That is quite cool. But then because they are sagas, they also work with cards that let you remove or add counters. So like proliferating, you can proliferate through the stages and get your value quicker. But then because they're creatures, they also die to removal. Like this isn't this is a saga creature, so you can Doomblade this effectively. Or not this one. This one's indestructible, but like for other ones, you can Doomblade them. But like you can also reanimate them and sneak attack them. That is quite interesting. That is something that kind of like, for some of the more expensive ones, are things to consider. But sorry, let's get back to Summon Knights of the Round, this 8-mana saga. This does make a lot of bodies by itself. Like, is it 12 bodies over 4 turns? Like 24 power is a lot of power. And when the 5th chapter goes off, you will probably have won the game. The flip side of that is that this is an 8-mana spell that takes 5 turns to win the game after you play it. Which is not the speed for a lot of cubes. I will consider that, James. I think this is incredibly cool, but incredibly inefficient, is my initial gut with this. I don't hate it as a sneak attack target. You swing for 9, and you get to maybe keep 6 of that power back. My gut is not one for fast cubes, but I do think this is a cool card. Like This is one I want to cheat into play somehow. Like I want to discard and replenish it, or I want to Academy Rector for it if I didn't get to draft an Omniscience or something like that. Like,
how are we swinging for 9 with a sneak attack?
I was swinging for we're swinging for 3, but we're making 6 more power.
We're making 6 power, which is bad. Yeah,
that is worse. Okay, I will admit that's worse. They don't have haste. Oh, dreadful. I literally said that in the.
Yeah, I think this is like a medium reanimate target is how I'd view it. Because the upside of this is, yes, it makes a ton of dudes. It will very reliably win you the game if it sticks around, and it's quite hard to kill because it's indestructible. It also, in the meantime, makes it really hard for them to kill you by just attacking on the ground. You have a 3/3 indestructible and 3/2/2s. That's going to be hard to get through. But it doesn't stop them killing you in the air, and it doesn't like remove any of their creatures. It doesn't actually. If they can go over the top of this, right? Is my point. If they're on a game plan that isn't just attack you with some idiots on the ground, this actually doesn't stop them killing you, and it doesn't kill them that quickly. Would be my concerns. Plus, on top of that, it kind of doesn't work with a lot of the other ways we're cheating stuff into play, right? Like this isn't good to sneak attack, in my opinion. Definitely not good to flash.
Middling to sneak attack. I will admit that it's middling to sneak attack.
I'd be pretty embarrassed if I sneak attacked first.
Okay, fair.
Yeah, it doesn't work with flash, doesn't work with Salgrave stuff, but like that's fine. But the interesting part is it is an enchantment, and we haven't really had before a reanimate target that's also an enchantment. And I think it's kind of interesting for cards like Academy Rector, cards like Replenish, because my issue with Rector, putting it in cubes, has always been like, do I really want to put in like an Omniscience or something that's basically never going to see play with unless someone has exactly Academy Rector? It's kind of like a one card plan, right? And if Rector isn't open, then it's just a complete blank. Whereas
I get you.
Putting this in your cube, plus like there's another giant summon we're going to talk about later, which is decent. Having those two, which are like reasonable reanimate targets and really good to Rector for, maybe that kind of unlocks Rector to be used in some cubes where it was a bit hard to justify previously. Plus, you said cards like Replenish. There's a couple of other like slightly less efficient ways of cheating an enchantment. So yeah, I think it's not like naturally going in a bunch of cubes as they're set up now, but maybe it kind of opens up a little bit of new ground in terms of ways to cheat in enchantments.
No, definitely. Like there are a bunch of different ways of like either copying enchantments or like it was like a whole new realm of things, which in theory these open up. So yeah, so that's why I kind of wanted to talk about them in general and also this card. Specifically on this card, I did just look up, and Cura Best the Sea God is 1 mana cheaper, and that's a better Magic card.
I mean, that card is very good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think cheating big enchantment it just sounds like a cool space to me for like a deadlier cube. Yeah, get Starfield of Nyx in there, and go to town. Nice.
All right, we're moving on to Blue James. What do you think of Hermes?
Yeah, so Hermes, Overseer of Elpis, is 3 and a blue for a 2/4 legendary creature Elder Wizard. Says, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create a 1/1 blue bird creature token with flying and vigilance. And whenever you attack with 1 or more birds, you scry 2. So this is basically a better Murmuring Mystic. And that card was kind of cool. I guess you're down 1 toughness, but you're getting it off any non-creature rather than just instants of sorceries, which is a really big upgrade. The birds have vigilance. Can't imagine we care about that too often. But you also get this scry 2 when you attack with 1 or more birds. That's pretty nice. My issue with this sort of card in the Spells Matter decks is I find they generally work a lot better if your threats are cheaper and you can play your threats on the first couple of turns and then start playing your non-creature spells to trigger them. This sort of asks you to, so if you play this on turn 4, you're probably not triggering it the same turns. Then it's like turn 5 before you start actually getting paid off for this. It also obviously makes it harder to play this and trigger it in the same turn, or like play this and have a way to protect it available. Having said that, it is powerful. Like 1/1 flyers are very real cards, and the scry trigger will just scry you 2 more actions trigger this. So I think if you cast this and they don't do anything to it and you get to untap with it, you're going to be in a really good spot. My concern is just that it's 4 mana, and that can be kind of tough. So yeah, I think it's like definitely worse than things like Young Pyromancer, Third Path Iconoclast, Monastrumentor. But if you're like down to take it a little bit slower, I think this is certainly a really powerful card.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I'd agree with a little slower. Or yeah, I can see this as in a 720 cube where kind of like it's looking for something cool in its 4-drop slot in blue. Yeah, like when we've definitely cubed with Murmuring Mystic in relatively high powered level cubes up until a couple of years ago. But yeah, just like generally with the more expensive token makers, it's things like like you either go cheap and efficient that trigger off of individual spells and make you like one creature that's a set power and toughness like this, or it's things like Shark Typhoon that's making you like 7/7s if you cast a 7, like kind of like where the size is more related to the size of the spell you're casting. I'm thinking Shark Typhoon. I'm thinking I like Chromos Seed Shark. Kind of like those both care about like the size of spell. So kind of like this is in a bit of a weird spot, just because generally these type of things generally go in decks with a curve is a little bit cheaper, basically. But yeah, fine card. Like if I saw this in a mid power leveled cube, I wouldn't think anything of it. But yeah, maybe not one for higher power levels. Right, let's keep it going. Next up, we have Sleep Magic. This is a single blue for an enchantment aura. When this aura enters, tap enchanted creature. Enchanted creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. And when enchanted creature is dealt damage, sacrifice this aura. So this is a cool removal spell for a peasant cube, because importantly, this is an uncommon. Those cubes did already have Bind the Monsters, which I have been impressed by. That one deals you damage equal to the creature's power when it taps it. This, in theory, can be removed if you have a way of the creature dealing damage, but I think effectively this is just going to be a strict upgrade to Bind the Monsters in most occasions. Like, unless pingers are in your cube, like even if they end up like lightning bolting their own creature, like they're still down a card to get this off, and that's kind of fine. Not for cubes with rares would be my gut, but I still think this is a solid card.
So even in high power level cubes, I don't mind running like 1 to 2 of the cheap blue aura based removal spells, just because like as creatures get more have got more powerful, and like the cheap creatures specifically, like are way more powerful than they used to be. I think blue kind of does sometimes just need a way to catch up a little bit, and it just doesn't have a lot of tools for that, you know. Like, you know, obviously this isn't as good as like Fatal Push or Flame Slash or something, but blue doesn't have those cards. This is kind of what blue has, right? And we've had a couple of pretty good ones recently. So I think this is pretty solid. It doesn't work against everything, right? Like if there plays like a Shieldred or an Urza or something, it doesn't remove the ability, so you're it's not going to deal with those cards particularly well. But like basically any creature which is mostly getting value by attacking and blocking or using a tap effect, this is going to be pretty strong, right? And it it kills their elf on turn 1, or it kills their questing beast or whatever, the massive mana advantage, right? Obviously, being an aura, you're opening yourself up to things like them flickering their creature, bouncing their creature, having enchantment removal for this. But as I say, this kind of is just the removal that blue has access to, right? Beggars can't be choosers in a lot of ways. I think if you're just in for one of these effects, we got Unable to Scream a couple of sets ago in Duskmorn. But like one blue for an aura, it becomes a 0/2 toy, I think, with no abilities. That card is, I think, a little bit better because it does remove all the abilities, which this one doesn't.
Quite nice, yeah.
But this one actually stops. That one does give them a 0/2 blocker, so maybe in the more aggressive deck, this one's a little bit better. There's also like Fresh Start, which is 2 mana, but it has flash and also removes the abilities. So I think this is like not a 0 for those cubes. I think it could be worth looking at. My hunch is that Unable to Scream is a little bit better, but I don't mind having 1 or 2 of these cheap blue removal spells just to give the control and combo decks a way to not get run over too quickly.
So, have these found their way into like the Mitgo Vintage Cube or like hype?
Yeah, we have. Or certainly last time I drafted LSV's cube, he was running Fresh Start in there, which is the like 1 blue Flash Aura, which gives -5/-0 and removes all abilities.
Okay.
I can't remember if it was in the last iteration of Vintage Cube. It might have been, but those cubes tend to be pretty closely aligned.
Pretty cool. Yeah. I guess my thought with blue just in Vintage Cube is just like, it's got all the power, it's fine. But I guess like Broadside and Gut do kill people, so you do need to ways to answer the board, I guess. So yeah, okay. Yeah, so yeah, maybe to an extent that might just be something of cube design that it is a new little upgrade. So yeah, okay, very cool. Yeah. So yeah, maybe not so Sleep Magic, maybe not, but yeah, the single mana blue way of interacting seems like a solid include nowadays. Okay, awesome.
All right, next up, we are moving on to black cards, and I think one of the more powerful cards in the set, actually. We have Cecil Dark Knight. This is a single black mana for a 2/3 legendary creature human knight with Death Touch. So 1 mana, 2/3 Death Touch, kind of crushing it off the bat. Has the ability Darkness. Whenever Cecil deals damage, you lose that much life. Then, if your life total is less than or equal to half your starting life total, untap Cecil and transform it. It transforms into Cecil the Deemed Paladin. It's a 4/4 legendary creature, human knight with lifelink. And whenever Cecil attacks, other attacking creatures gain indestructible until end of turn. This is a lot for 1 mana.
It is, yes.
Bloody hell. It's 1 mana 2/3 Death Touch is kind of an insane rate.
It's got a downside, James. It's got a downside.
Yeah, barely though. Cheap Death Touchers are already great in like a bunch of matchups. Like there's a bunch of cube matchups where you would just like put a Typhoid Rats in your deck if you could, right?
100%. Yeah.
The issue is normally with those creatures is that when your opponent isn't attacking you on the ground, they don't do anything. This really does. It's really hard to block. Like it's hard to trade off for a 2/3 Death Touch and feel good about it when it costs 1 mana. And it gets in for 2 and will just flip pretty quickly. After a couple of attacks with this, you fetched, you shocked, maybe you cast a Thoughtseize. This can be flipping like, turn 4 pretty reasonably, I think. And sure, you're down a bunch of life at that point, but if it lives, you're getting that life back, Sure, there's maybe an issue, like if you're playing against, if you're like racing against an aggressive deck, I let this hit from a couple of times, it deals damage to you and then they kill it. Maybe that's a problem. But also against the aggressive decks, you can just block with it. It's going to be really strong there. It will be like 1 mana trade with one of their better creatures, and sure, you lose 2 life, but who really cares? And like black just has a lot of ways to deal itself damage, so you can really turbo this if you want to. Stuff like Dark Confidant, Thoughtseize, Bitter Triumph, like
Necropotence, James, Necropotence. That's where we're going.
That's the answer, of course.
Grizzle Brand. No.
Yeah. Also, I like that because this is like hard to block and feel good about it. It's they're most just not going to block it, and I quite like the Blue Black Ninjas package at the moment.
Quite cool.
Like with the new Kaito, I think that was a really big boost to that as a deck. And this is just a great enabler for that because you really want cheap creatures that are cheap to replay. And yeah, like I just feel like 90% of the time they're not blocking this because mostly they need to block with like at least a 2-drop, maybe a 3-drop to trade with this, and then you're just getting a good mana advantage anyway. So I think this is really strong. I'm certainly trying it in Powered Cube. I think for those just like interactive mid-rangey or like assertive / mid-range like blue-black or Rakdos decks, this seems really strong. Great in a lower stack as well.
That's quite hot. Yeah, I'm glad you clarified mid-rangey deck then, because I did think you've finally gone down and given into mono black aggro. But I agree with everything you said. The one thing I do want to touch on is that I've seen some people online discussing this as like a way of making Death Shadow work in Cube, and I want to say as a warning, don't do that. I don't think that's good enough. So Death Shadow, kind of like the gimmick with both of them is they both want you to have a low life, and then you get a reward for having low life. But if you have both of them in play,
and then you attack with this and your Death Shadow dies?
Yeah, exactly. You will kill your Death Shadow with the 4/4 life link. Like I think this doesn't ask you too much to go into a deck to be good. It's just a 1-drop that, worst case scenario, will just trade for a real creature. And the potential upside is quite a solid, like for 1 mana investment, this is actually quite nuts. Like,
yeah,
it feels so free to flip it most of the time. Like, in the average game of Magic, you're probably going to go down to less than your average starting life total. So yeah, I think Cecil Dark Knight and Cecil Redeemed Paladin are both pretty solid cards.
For sure. It's also wild that you get an untap when you flip it as well. So like,
oh, you do? Wow.
In a racing scenario, you like you pay a bit of life, hit from with this, flip it, and then you just have a 4/4 lifelink on blocks ready to go. Kind of wild. One mana. Jesus.
Slaps. Maybe this was a one for when it was modern. All right, let's move on to our next card. This is a lot of Magic card, James. I have a lot of reading, but it's quite cool. This is Sephiroth Fabled Soldier. This is the other character I know. Write in the comments if you can guess what Final Fantasy game I played. It is 2 and a black for a 3/3 legendary creature, human avatar soldier. When it enters or attacks, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, draw a card. Whenever another creature dies, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. If this is the 4th time this ability has resolved, transform Sephiroth. Sephiroth transforms into Sephiroth One-Winged Angel. It is a 5/5 legendary creature, Angel Nightmare Avatar with flying. It has Supernova, which is as this creature transforms into Sephiroth One-Winged Angel, you get an emblem with whenever a creature dies, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. And whenever it attacks, you may sacrifice any number of other creatures. If you do, draw that many cards. So, I want to test it in my queues, and I'm not sure power level wise where it ends up. The reason for being is that we have a bunch of these effects already at 2 mana. We have things like Blood Artist, we have Marionette Apprentice, that also triggers off of artifacts. At 3 mana, we also have Mayhem Devil, which triggers off of everything being sacrificed, including treasures, blood, and fetch lands. And I think specifically in powered cubes, my gut is that those are stronger. I do like that this is both a Blood Artist effect and a sack outlet. You don't often get that. Like I mentioned earlier, having a Token Maker and an Anthem. It's the 2 things we want on 1 card. This, in theory, is that. It is a way of sacrificing things for card advantage, which we love, as well as being a Blood Artist effect. But the flip side, I just don't think we're getting to in super efficient, higher powered level cubes. I guess with the flip, maybe I shouldn't be thinking about this in terms of I need to sacrifice 4 things. It can just be 2. Like we attack, we sack 1 thing, we trade off 2 other things, and some of the things die in combat. Maybe like I don't know, James. Like for me, I think the back half is going to be pretty tricky to get through. But like, am I undervaluing that? Do you think are you going to be getting to the backside of this quite quickly? Because if you do, I think the backside is very strong.
Yeah, for sure. I think mostly I'm evaluating this like the backside isn't going to happen very often. But I think that's fine. I actually wouldn't really put this in the same category as stuff like Blood Artist, because Blood Artist is a card purely for an aristocrat's deck, right? You need to combine it with like a bunch of stuff to sacrifice and a way to sacrifice stuff. This doesn't ask that of you. It just asks you to have some disposable things lying around that you want to cash in for cards, and then it's going to give you life on top of that. And this is triggering off every creature. So it's not like you're just getting the life off the thing you sack. You're also getting life when stuff trades in combat, when you point removal spells at their creatures, when they point removal spells at your creatures. It will just be a pretty big life swing most games when it gets to stick around. So I'm mostly viewing this as a mid-range card for the most powerful cubes, just because I've tried putting aristocrat stuff in my powered cube. I don't think it's good enough. I've cut most of it. But this, I kind of think is maybe fine as a mid-range card. You just need to have a bunch of ways to make tokens that you don't mind cashing in. But like, I don't know, you play a Bitter Blossom, you play this, that sounds really good. Like, if they kill it, you got your card up front, you got a bit of life. And if they don't, if this gets to stick around, you get more cards on attacks. It seems kind of strong to me. But that's not to say it can't do messed up stuff in a dedicated Aristocrats deck. It absolutely can. If you combine it with an actual sack outlet and you're reliably getting to like killing 4 things in a turn, flipping it, then it goes kind of nuts because the other side's kind of wild. Again, it needs some fuel to in the form of tokens, but if you can do that, it'll win you the game very, very quickly. So yeah, I think this is strong. I'm kind of tempted to try it in Powered Cube. I don't know if it's going to be good enough, but I think it's certainly interesting. I'm kind of viewing it in the same category as Yawgmoth.
Okay, yeah.
Which is a card I like in Powered Cube, even though I'm not doing Aristocrat stuff. It's just a really strong card.
Yeah. That's a very good comparison. Like Aristocrat adjacent, but it is just a good Magic card, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I don't think it's as good as Yawgmoth, but I think it's it might be worth trying, you know?
That's fair, yeah.
And the thing of the flip happening just through combat and stuff, I think is pretty real too. Like, obviously it's on board, so they're not going to probably block in such a way as 4 things just die naturally, but you can do stuff like you make a bunch of attacks, like 3 things die, and then you use a fatal push post-combat, kill 1 more thing, and this flips. Like, that stuff will just come up. But honestly, if a bunch of stuff is trading in combat and this in play, you're probably getting such a big advantage on life total that you're pretty happy anyway.
No, I think that tracks. I'm definitely probably trying this in both of my cubes. My gut is that probably not for unpowered vintage, but I think my slower treat yourself cube, I think this is kind of a slam dunk there because that is making a lot of tokens. This is definitely one I'll be proxying because currently this is pre-ordering for ungodly sum, James. But
yeah, that's fair.
Cool. Right, we're on to red. What do you think of Gao Feral Youth, James?
Yeah, Gao Feral Youth is 1 red for a 2/2 legendary creature human berserker. It has the ability Rage. Whenever Gao attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And at the beginning of each end step, if a card left your graveyard this turn, Gao deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. This is a pretty aggressive 2-drop. Like, it attacks a 3/3 on turn 3, that's fine. And if they don't kill it, it's going to grow from there. The second ability, I don't think is a huge part of this card, actually. Listen, we've talked a lot about the Insidious Roots deck and all the adjacent stuff to that on this podcast. I think that deck's really cool. That deck is very rarely red, and I don't think that this is the card that would put you into red because, like, doing 3 or 4 damage to a face just isn't really the payoff that deck is looking for most of the time. It's a pretty slow, grindy deck, which is going to slowly assemble an overwhelming board state. It's not, I think, that interested in a bit of face damage. Having said that, you will occasionally get some like incidental ways to trigger this in your red decks. I like a lot of the moment the like red discard theme for aggro. I think that works really well as a way to make your aggro decks a bit more interesting. And a few of those payoffs do like incidentally trigger this stuff like Currency Converter. If you discard a card, it goes to a graveyard, then gets exiled under the converter. So that would trigger this. And even stuff like Containment Construct triggers this with a discard outlet. So you'll get the odd trigger off stuff like that. But my instinct is that isn't a big part of this card. I think mostly what this card is doing is that it's a 2-mana 2/2 that gets +1/+1 counter when it attacks. And that's fine. It's not... I think there are enough better red 2-drops that I'm not going to be looking at it for super high power level cubes, but I think in most cubes this is perfectly reasonable.
No, I think I'm a little higher on the bottom ability, but not specifically in like. I don't think we're going into a 5th color in our Insidious Roots deck because we've already had some white ones. I think it's more kind of like if you have that in a cube and you're also looking at doing like maybe like a flashback Burning Vengeance thing in like Is It Spells or something like that, like flashing back spells, delving things away is a way of triggering this. I think it's like for me, there's like a more interesting version of an effect that deals damage when you cast an instant or sorcery, something like that. It's like I think it's a cool card, and there's a place for it. But yeah, it's if kind of like you are overlapping certain archetypes is kind of where I'm thinking, basically, rather than like I don't think we're going Jund Insidious routes just yet.
Yeah, I think that one might be tough. Yeah, I guess I'd be more into it if you could get like multiple triggers in a turn. But
that's fair.
Yeah, because like if it's the turn you play it, then you're only getting the you're getting 2 damage in your end step. It's just not that big of a payoff, right? And then if it's got to attack a couple of times for its power to be bigger, then it's probably doing okay anyway, and you didn't like need visibility that much. Like it's certainly upside. It's nice to have, but my gut is that we're not like building around that a ton, you know?
No, exactly. Like it is each end step. So if you do it on your opponent's turn, and then that is something. But again, like that does seem a bit more build aroundy than I think we have the ability to do in Cube. But like I actually kind of want to build this in Commander. I think that this could actually be quite fun because it's each opponent. This is a Commander card. Yeah, I thought Gal was cool, but yeah, I do agree with what you said. But like if they, I think this is like one of the first times we've seen them do the Insidious Roots text in red. So this is kind of they have completed the Wooburg trifecta of now. Like this is just an effect they are putting on cards now, which is cool and is worth talking about. But go. Let's move on to the next one. This one I think could see quite a lot of play. This is Opera Love Song. This is a 1 and a red for an instant, and you choose one. Exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards until your next end step, or one or two target creatures each get +2/+0 until end of turn. So this is an uncommon. So you will see this in Peasant cubes, and I think you might see this in higher powered level cubes as well, because it's a nice flexible spell that gives you decent card selection, or it can help you push some damage through. And that's kind of exactly what red wants from a card a lot of the time. It's nice that you can be leaving mana up on your opponent's turn to either counter something or remove something. And then if they don't do anything, you can just cash this in and get 2 cards to play on your next turn. Or also adding 4 damage to an attack is a lot. Like you don't really get combat tricks in Cube nowadays. So people aren't thinking about them when they're doing their math. And like 4 is not 3. Like people play around lightning bolts. They tend not to play around 4 damage. So maybe I am kind of dreaming too big with this, but like you could like there are worlds where you can get your opponents out of nowhere with this, or can help you trade up in combat. As again, people aren't expecting combat tricks. So I think this one is solid. Like, what do you think of Opera Love Song, James? Like, I'm tempted to test this in my higher powered cube.
I'm sure it's fine in Peasant. My instinct is that's probably as far as it goes. I think the main reason is that both modes for me just don't quite get there. I'm a lot lower on the red like impulsy card draw when you have to play it the same turn. So something like Reckless Impulse, right, lets you play it until the end of your next turn. So you spend the mana on the spell now, and if you hit a cheap thing, then you spend it in the center turn. But if not, you can just cast it next turn when you have all your mana untapped, and that's fine. This doesn't do that, so I feel like just snapping it off on your turn is kind of rough. You can kind of get around it by doing it in your opponent's end step. Mm-hmm. So then you have, because obviously you can play it until the next end step, so you can then untap, have all your mana on your turn. But in that case, you're just delaying seeing the cards, right? So if you needed to hit a land drop that turn, it isn't doing that for you, right? Or if you needed to dig for a removal spell to enable an attack. And obviously, because you don't know what you're going to hit, you're kind of going to be doing a lot of guesswork balancing those 2 things, whereas something with like Reckless Impulse, you can kind of just snap it off on your turn and be like, if I hit something I can cast now and impact the board, then great. If not, then I'll cast it next turn, no worries. I mean, certainly a fine mode to have in the cards. But I think because it's worse than those other effects, we need the second part of it to carry more weight. And for me, the combat trick that doesn't win combat just isn't quite doing enough for me. Like, it will push damage, it will steal some games. I just feel like it's a bit too situational, because you basically only want to use it when it's lethal in a lot of time, right? Or if you're like, and like quite specific scenarios when if you're like trading up for a bigger creature, maybe. But then you're still kind of down a card, right? I don't know. I think it's fine. Like you'd put it in. I'm sure some people would run it, but my instinct is there are better options for this stuff. I could see it in maybe a if you're sporting like heroic or like like feather redeemed, that sort of stuff. Is a thing that targets which also has other modalities. So that's kind of nice for that, I guess.
I could see that. Yeah, I guess the two sides aren't as efficient. But my gut is I'm going to test this and see how it goes. Yeah, I'm open to be wrong about it. I'm open to being wrong about it. But I think there's something here. But yeah, I guess we'll see where it ends up.
For sure. I will just say this the impulsy card draw as well. Just in general, it is much better the lower your curve is, because you don't want to be like if you have a bunch of 5 and 6 drops in your deck, then you really feel like you can't cast this on turn 3, right? Because you're just too likely to hit something too expensive to cast, even if it's in your opponent's end step and you're going to have all your mana. So you really want to be running it in a deck just with maximum possible amount of like 1 and 2 mana plays.
No, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, we're just coming after Karns. There's like a prowessy flurry aggro deck seems quite solid with this. But
yeah, I can see that.
All right, what do you think about this strapping young lad, James? Is it Sabin Master Monk?
Yeah, let's go with Sabin. So Sabin Master Monk is 4 and a red for a legendary creature human noble monk. So 5 mana. It is a 4/3 with double strike. Also has a blitz cost. So blitz, for those who don't remember, you can cast it from your graveyard for its blitz cost. It gains haste, and when this creature dies, draw a card and you sack it in your end step. And the blitz cost for this is 2 red, and you have to discard a card. But you will obviously get that card back when the creature dies. And you can cast, crucially, you can cast this card from your graveyard using its blitz ability. So a bit of a similar vibe to Tenacious Underdog, if you've played with that card, but on a larger scale, I guess. This hits for a lot of damage. They're taking 8 if they don't block it. 8 is a large number. I think it's solid at like the top end of your red aggro deck, but 5 is just kind of a lot of mana, and there are some really good 5 drops if you want to go up that high. And my issue with this is when they just like bolt it and you're just down so much mana, I think you're going to feel pretty bad. So I kind of think you have to be doing a little bit more than just casting this on the fair. But I could kind of see it if you're like milling yourself and then you're kind of getting this blitz ability for free. That does seem quite good, because it's just a lot of damage to have hanging out in your graveyard. Maybe also if you're doing the like red discard matters aggro thing we were talking about it, like you can just rummage this away early, and then like your opponent's not going to be feeling very comfortable with if they're on like even a slightly low life total with this hanging out in the graveyard, right?
It's just so much out of nowhere. Yeah.
Exactly. They're going to feel like they always have to like leave up a removal spell for it, and then you can just not cast it and do something else, right? Or if they're leaving back blockers for it, you can just go like end of their turn, move your blocker, untap, blitz this out of your graveyard, get in for 8. You even get your card back. I think there's some cool stuff going on here. I don't like it in just a generic beatdown deck that much, but I think if you're somehow putting this proactively in the graveyard, I think it's kind of good.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like you are not playing this to cast. You are playing this as I've milled half my deck. How am I winning the game type jobby. I have written down, whether you will agree with this or not, James, I do not know, the red Vengevine.
There is a slight issue of playing 4 mana for this compared to Vengevine.
I've hardcast a Vengevine before. Don't worry about it. It's fine. But, I know. I think Sabin's a cool one. I think, oddly, despite how much of a cooler card I think this is, I do think it is a little generic in that the end result is you are just hitting them for 8, which is like generally you're either going for raw power level, which I think there's more, as we discussed, there's higher top end ones, or there's higher upside ones, or going like more synergistic in an archetype. And this kind of is like a 20-second card in a lot of kind of like self-mill aggro decks, basically. I think a lot of the time, like I could see it in like if you're doing like a 540 or a 720 cube where you're doing like a Jund graveyard aggro, like this is the card I want to put in my like Canadian Highlander dredge list. Basically, I think this card is sweet, but it's a card I will add and then will probably remove after a couple of updates once some other more efficient creatures come out, basically, that I kind of like can't just like it's. If this were to go into my cube, it'd be a very obvious cut at a later point, basically. Even though I think it's sweet.
Can I interest you in discarding a Root Waller to the Blitz cost?
Always, James.
Could return the Vengevine, you know?
Yeah. So yeah, if you have like you have nailed it exactly. If you have Root Wallers in your cube, then consider this. Basically, I think that's the way we're going.
For real.
All right, let's keep it going. Next, we have Summon Kujata or Kuyata. It is a 6-mana 7/5 enchantment creature Saga Ox with Trample and Haste. Chapter 1 is Lightning. This creature deals 3 damage to each of up to 2 target creatures. Chapter 2 is Ice. Up to 3 target creatures can't block this turn. And Chapter 3 is Fire. Discard a card, then draw 2 cards. When you discard a card this way, this creature deals damage equal to that card's mana value to each opponent. So this is... So I know I said at the start I don't like sagas with less than 4 chapters, but this does have haste. That is important because if you're... This is in red. If we're spending 6 mana on a 7/5 trample creature, we want to get a couple of attacks in. So importantly, you do get 2 attacks in with this, and then the last ability has the ability to throw a bunch of damage at your opponent. And if you do all that, I think you probably win the game with this. It does kind of like, again, these are like fixed planeswalkers in my head. Like sagas have always been that. But yeah, so just getting the ETB and just cleaning up the board, I think, is nice. Effectively, this is always going to be... Yes, it has trample, but the first two abilities just clean up the board very nicely. Like you're either destroying the creatures or they can't block this turn. Because this is a commander card, it's kind of meant for multiplayer games where there's lots of blockers around. But in theory, your like chapters 1 and 2 on this will really mop up your opponent's board quite nicely. Yeah, very big, hits like a truck. It kind of reminds me of Drakaseth, more of Flames, actually, a little bit. That was like a big dragon that was more of a sneak attack target that kind of comes in, hits for a bunch of damage and spreads around, it kind of like hits for a bunch of damage and mops up your opponent's board as well. This kind of feels similar, but is cheaper to cast while still hitting for the same amount of damage. Yeah, I think a solid card. What do you think of Kuyata, James?
Yeah, I like this quite a lot. It's just so much damage, you know. 7/5 trample haste, and they're just really going to struggle to block it with the... it comes down, they don't know it's coming. It's going to kill get some blockers out of the way, hit for 7. The next turn, they're certainly not blocking it, because it says up to 3 target creatures can't block.
Yeah.
At that point, this on its own has hit them for 14, assuming they haven't killed it. And then the last chapter's just also going to deal a bunch of damage to them on the way out, which might also be the way out for them, I imagine. I quite like this as sort of the top end of a red-green monsters beat stack. I think it could be really powerful there.
Yeah, casting this earlier than turn 6, I think will be great. Like if you can get this out on like 4 or something like that, then that is incredible.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think if you're running something like Inferno Titan, I kind of think this is probably better.
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, like the haste is just such a big deal, right? Because it means that if they have the removal spell for this, you're already getting a bunch of damage out of it, right? You're going to kill 2 creatures a lot of the time with the first ability, and if it's not like instant speed, you can also get in for 7, and then at that point you're kind of okay if you kill it. But you've got a lot for your 6 mana already, and they really need to kill it because otherwise next turn they're not blocking again. They're taking 7 more. Yeah, I think this is really strong. Like 6 is a lot of mana. I'm considering it for Powered Cube, but it might just be that 6 is too much, As I think the things you'd cut are maybe something like Goldspan Dragon for this. I think could be a reasonable switch. But yeah, 6 is obviously a lot more than 5. But I think if you want a 6 drop, that's going to kill your opponent, this is kind of it,
Like this does fill that. It's a dragon in all but creature type, if that makes sense. It's a 6-drop hasty thing that comes down and kills your opponent. It's a dragon, basically.
Yeah, for sure. It doesn't technically have flying, but their blockers are already dead, so it doesn't matter.
Exactly. Exactly. This next card's called Suplex, James. What does Suplex do?
I mean, if we're going off the artwork, to me it looks like a man about to be run over by a train more than a man about to suplex a train.
Oh no, I've heard about this. I think in one of the games this man does suplex a train.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, great respect, Tim, because my money's on the train going by the artwork, to be honest. Anyway, what the card does is Suplex is 1 in a red for a sorcery. You choose one, either Suplex deals 3 to target creature, and if that creature would die this turn, exile it instead, or exile target artifact. So basically it's a sorcery speed abrade that exiles stuff. I think most of the time this is worse than abrade, but it has some pretty useful upside, like killing a ring is really nice. And kind of down for more ways to exile for 1 ring. Also killing things like there are just quite a lot of indestructible artifacts, like killing a Cauldron Complete's a pretty big deal. Skills of Blightsteel Colossus. Even if you're running the indestructible tapped artifact lands, this just you get to send this into a sinkhole. That's quite nice. It's also pretty good, I guess, if you're running it with 1 ring in your deck. Having 1 or 2 answers to your own ring is actually pretty nice, because you see so many cards when you have a ring going, right, that you will find it. And sometimes if you can't kill your opponent back quickly, you do need a way to not be taking 4 damage next turn, and this can do that for you. So yeah, my instinct is that abrade is mostly better, but I think this is certainly one to bear in mind. I think it fills some interesting roles.
Yeah, for me, the lack of instant speed kind of kills it for me. Like you brought up the use case of 1 ring and Blightsteel Colossus. So again, like maybe it is if you're like specifically in higher power level queues. But then my thought is kind of like, effectively we're already running abrade because it's a less efficient version of those effects, but it's flexible. And just losing the flexibility of it being instant speed, I think, is quite a lot for me, if I'm honest with you. I think, for limited, I think this is going to be a great card. This is going to be a slam dunk in like limited draft and stuff, like in the actual set. But for me, outside of the use cases you mentioned, actually, but even then, is it just you're running a worse card to make your good cards better? I'm not sure. Like my gut is, I think we stick with the braid for the time being. But if there is a rise in indestructible artifacts and such, then I think maybe we can come back to suplex. For what it's worth, I have been doing research, and yes, he does suplex the train. It's in Final Fantasy VI. It is very 8-bit, 24-bit. I don't know how many bits it is or what console this is from, but yes, the boy Sabin. Oh, Sabin, who we just talked about. I love him even more now. Okay, he does indeed flip a train. I love that for him.
Nice. What a gamer. I think it's like it's not amazing. Maybe in like a 720 cube, right? And you just want like another flexible shatter effect or whatever on top of a braid, and you run both.
That's fair. Yeah, it is also a common as well. And yeah, in I could see a world where you run both. Like also in Pauper where like artifact lands exist, and like ATOGs are quite good, and so is Cranial Ram. Just having 2 versions of a braid might actually be correct.
Yeah, for sure. Not enough sinkholes get run into cube. Is my take. We need to go up more loud.
Am I right? Yeah. Am I right? Cool. All right, let's keep it going. Next up, we have Yuffie Materia Hunter. This is 2 in a red for a 3/3 legendary creature, Human Ninja. It has ninjutsu, for 1 and a red, which, as a reminder, is you can pay 1 and a red and return an unblocked attacker you control to your hand, and put this card onto the battlefield from your hand, tapped and attacking. When Yuffie enters, gain control of target non-creature artifact for as long as you control Yuffie. Then you may attach an equipment you control to it. So, importantly, this is the first ever red ninja, which is kind of cool because it will mean that people will not be expecting it. To add this to a deck, I don't think you can be just playing it and hoping for your opponent to have an artifact. We don't just want to be stealing a treasure with this. It needs to be a real card. So, like, if I'm drafting this, I want this to be in a deck with equipment that I want to equip. And I'm specifically thinking about Colossus Hammer here. 1 mana artifact, 8 to equip, gives +10/+10. Very good. This is a more interesting way of equipping and attacking with it, because effectively you can get them out of nowhere with this. Like, you can 13 them? That's pretty cool. Like, we've already talked about issues with equipment matters as an archetype in this video. In this podcast. I could be more interested in a card like this that we can equip something like the hammer to, and have it like be a small package rather than a whole archetype. So rather than like my Boris section is equipment, we have like treat it more like a 2-card combo in like Gruul or Boris, that kind of thing. Like if we had Colossus Hammer, Belt of Giant Strength, which is like a green version of it's a green equipment that makes a creature power and toughness 10/10. Then you have something like this, or like Magnetic Theft, which also equips an equipment you control for 1 mana at instant speed. That's a cool little package that you might be able to like add to a cube. I think that could be interesting, as it doesn't need too many slots and it doesn't take away from what kind of like Boris is just good at doing now anyway, which is more kind of like tokeny go wide stuff. I think Yuffie's cool. Outside of trying to do stuff with Colossus Hammer, which I know people have been trying in Cube for a while because it is a cool modern deck, I think it might struggle, but worth mentioning because, yeah, as it's our first red ninja, I don't think people will be expecting it too much. The point of a ninja, as it were.
That's true. Maybe they'll try and kill your creatures post blocks, and you can get them. Yeah, I mostly agree that this isn't really good enough on the fair. It's the fact that they get the artifacts back if they kill it, Yeah, I think this is a lot worse than something like Thieving Skydiver at doing that. I guess the upside is you can take big stuff, but I don't know how often that's going to come up.
That's incredibly sideboardy if you're putting it in your deck for that thing, I think.
Yeah, for sure. The hammer thing, like, it's fine, but this doesn't have any keywords, right? So you're kind of just assembling.
In theory, it's already unblocked.
Sure.
When it's coming in is my thinking, and it's like a one-shot, hiya, do them 13. But I do see that it does require a fair bit of setup.
Yeah, so you have to be able to get a creature through as well as having the hammer, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Is the challenging part, I guess. Yeah, maybe if you're doing Colossal Hammer stuff anyway, this is a card you could put in. It wouldn't be. It doesn't inspire me to go and add Colossal Hammer to any of my cubes. I'll say that. But yeah, maybe if you're already there, you can try this.
It is something that people have been talking about for a while because of the modern deck, and I think my gut is at some point in the next 6 months I will try it as a package, and this could be part of it. We'll see.
Okay, yeah, I like that.
All right, we're on to green now, James.
Yeah, first up in green we have Balam T-Vexor. Is how I'm going to say those words. It is 4 green for a 6/6 creature dinosaur at common. It has trample, and whenever this creature enters, you gain 3 life, and it has forest cycling for 2 generic mana. Rip Colossal Dreadmore, I guess. It's just power crept on so many axes. This seems really good for Pauper, actually. The top-end threats are generally not amazing in that format. And this is just a lot of stats on your land cycler. I will say 2 mana land cycling is very, very different from 1 mana land cycling.
Yes.
You're playing this primarily because you want a 6-drop, and if you really need a land forest, you can cycle it. But you're certainly not counting this as a land, where Like, I think this is a much weaker card than something like Generous Ant, for example. But as I said, the 6s in Pauper aren't amazing. This is a fine one. It's going to stabilize you really well. It's hard to kill because it's got 6 toughness. The life gains always plays out really well on these creatures. And forest cycling, just adding more consistency to your deck is always good. Not anything to write home about, but I think it probably will get into quite a few Pauper cubes for that reason.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, I like in most Pauper cubes, I think I could see this and Generous Ant. Like I personally love land cyclers. I think they're just very good and very solid at just smoothing out your draws and making your deck more consistent. But yeah, I agree that Generous Ant being a single mana to forest cycle is going to be a bit more consistent. Like there are now common dual lands as well, so you can fix with these as well. Is worth mentioning. There's like the snow cycle, and then there's the one from Dominaria United. So it can be a bit of fixing at a push, but yeah, solid card. Yeah, it is mainly here for as a 6/6 beater, but
yeah, for sure. It's the dual lands in Pauper, I think, are all tapped, right? So it's it's a really tough way to do it, to spend 2 mana to cycle and get a tap land. If you really
want to splash that 4th color, James, you have to do it sometimes.
Oh, you know I do, yeah.
For that Honden tribal deck. It'll reward you for being slow by gathering all the Hondens, don't worry.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep it going. Next up, we have Sar's Chocobo. It's a single green mana for a 0/1 creature bird. It has landfall whenever a land you control enters, put a +1 counter on this creature. So we do like this effect, and while this is not as strong as Bristly Bill and Scythecat Cub, this is an uncommon. And while Peasant Cubes generally don't have fetch lands, and that's even the ones that break rarity for their lands, this is still a really nice effect. Like, it goes in a lands deck, it goes in a counters deck. If I had a Peasant Cube, I think this is a very solid test. Like, play this on 1, you're going to be hopefully playing a land for the next couple of turns. This is just going to grow over the course of the game and be pretty solid. While there's no fetch lands, there are things like Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse, as well as things like Rampant Growth. Could be something cool there. Yeah, I think a perfectly solid little card.
Yeah, for sure. This is going to be pretty good when you have it on turn 1. Pretty bad for the rest of the time, I think.
Yes, this is a dreadful top deck.
Yeah. You top deck this, and it's going to sit there and be a 0/1 for a couple of turns a lot of the time. But that's... it's a 1-drop at uncommon. You can't ask for that much, and this will have games where it's great, right? And it's not like there's an abundance of other great beatdowny 1-drops at uncommon for green. So if you want to support green doing maybe a counters thing or more of an aggressive thing, then this seems quite nice. I think the way some Peasant Cubes are set up, you'd maybe rather your 1-drops just be like elves and stuff. But yeah, it certainly like fills the role, which there aren't a lot of great options for otherwise. So it's definitely worth considering.
Like, I think I have seen people. I mean, I've seen people try this in higher power level cubes, and I think that it might not work there. But like, there is like a landfall aggro deck that probably does exist with like a Coom Hound, Scythe Leopard, and like Stepped Links. Like, basically a bunch of cards from Zendikar. There's a bunch of cheap landfall creatures from Zendikar. Like, maybe there's enough now. Like I'm looking at this, like Brushfire Elemental will kill people. Like, maybe there is something there. Like I'm thinking of this more as just like as a peasant Tarmogoyf style of card rather than a landfalling aggro card. But maybe there is like an archetype behind it as well. If that is something you're trying to push.
Yeah, I could see that. I think this is just a personal thing for me, but I kind of just, whenever I try and play decks like that, they just feel so like RNG, like
yes.
It's just so much about like, do your cards come off the top of the deck in the right order? Because all your cards do nothing when you don't play them on the first couple of turns of the game. It's it can be really rough. And then you've got and you can like try and play. Then you can play all these like bad enablers where you try and get a bunch of land drops late, and then they kill your guy. I know. I find them kind of frustrating to play sometimes, but maybe I think that's maybe more of a personal thing. I think like there definitely are not draws there, and you can do some powerful stuff.
No, I would agree with that. From someone who's been around for at least 2 Return to Zendikars, I have tried drafting those decks in both formats and just been like, just get run. Just like that, they're good while you make your land drops, and then you quickly stop making your land drops and die. But hey, maybe the point of this is we break Singleton for Sars Chocobo. It is adorable. But we're going to a bigger Chocobo next. James, take it away with Traveling Chocobo.
Traveling Chocobo is also adorable. It is 3 and a green for a 3/2 creature bird at Mythic Rare. Says you may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may play lands and cast bird spells from the top of your library. And if a land or bird you control entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Okay, so most of what's going on here is that it's a Courser of Kruphix that's a 3/2. That's a lot worse than a Courser of Kruphix being a 2/4. Because this is an effect that you kind of need to stick around for a couple of turns for you to get paid off from it, and 3/2 is just kind of rough stats to have that happen. On top of that, Courser is a pretty good blocker. This is basically never going to survive blocking. So that's a bunch of downsides versus Courser. There are some real upsides though here, which will come up. I think the biggest thing is going to be doubling up all your landfall triggers. And there are a lot of the landfall creatures now which see pretty widespread play in a lot of cubes. Like Bristly Bill, Scythecat Cub, Stringheart Nantuko, Lotus Cobra is pretty nice with this. It also goes pretty hard with like Omnath, the four-color Omnath.
Okay, nice.
Like you just make one land drop and you get the mana and the life straight away. That's pretty good. I guess if you play a fetch land, you get the damage too, which is cool. You can maybe even do stuff with like Field of the Dead and Valakut. It'll double up those triggers.
Oh, that's cool.
It's a little bit more niche. And even just stuff like your Surveil lands will Surveil twice, right? Like that's not nothing. It goes quite nice, I guess, in a Nadu deck as well, because that's often using it doesn't actually double up your Nadu triggers directly, but it does double up for landfall triggers, and those landfall creatures often go very well in an Nadu deck. Plus, on top of that, it can also cast Nadu off the top. Nadu is a bird, and that'll occasionally come off, I guess. You have this in play, you just vamp your Nadu and go off from there, I guess. Overall, I kind of suspect that this is probably slightly worse than Corso on aggregate. I just feel like the dying to a lot more removal and not blocking is kind of tough, but it might be worth a test, you know? Maybe that Landsfall stuff is just enough to get it over the line. Or like if you just want 2 courses in your cube. I think this is probably a bit better than I think Augur of Autumn would be the next best one otherwise, which is
I think this is way better than that.
Yeah, I think this is better than that card. So I could certainly see trying it in some cubes.
Yeah. My gut is that as an individual card, this is worse than a Course of Kruphix, because Corsair just really holds down the board, and also this doesn't go infinite with Fast Bond, which I'm assuming is a utter deal breaker for you, James. But so for me, I will be swapping this for Corsair in my cube, and that's because this does the effect of Corsair that I kind of want from it. Like, yes, it doesn't hold down the board, but green has other ways of holding down the board. I think that's not the end of the world. But just like the fact that this has quite a high potential upside with a bunch of really strong cards that we've been adding, like things like Bristly Bill, things like the Scythic Cub that you mentioned, and Stringheart Nantuko that you also mentioned. Those are the strongest cards in green right now. And this just having the potential of just really upping them at the cost of just being a slightly worse version of a card I'm already running. That seems like quite like a very easy test for me, and potentially something I will keep in for a while. Like I'm proxying this with test. Like it's going to be in the cube I do this weekend. If you draft this without any of the other bits, yes, it is going to be definitely worse than Corso Kruphix. But if you draft this with the other good cards that green has nowadays, I think it's going to be a quite nice little combination. And the Nadu stuff is cute, shall we say?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I guess it's always worth trying higher upside card, right? And it's easier to cast as well, which is not nothing.
Yeah, I think this will be a fun one. All right, let's keep it going. We have our last green card. Next up, we have Town Greeter. So this is 1 green for a 1/1 creature human citizen. When it enters, mill 4 cards. You may put a land card from among them into your hand. If you put a town card into your hand this way, you gain 2 life. Firstly, ignore the town part. I don't think it's going to come up. It's primarily not going to come up outside of Set Limited. But effectively, this is a power-crept version of Satyr Wayfinder, which still sees play in cubes that want that self-mill. I think I run Satyr Wayfinder in both of my cubes. It's just a great card at fueling what those decks want to do. It comes in, it mills it comes in and puts things into your bin. It's not a broken card, but it then lets you do broken things later in the game. And importantly, this is still a common. This is not just better because of the town clause. In cubes, that won't come up. The human part could come up. There are human matters that touches green. But what's different to the Wayfinder is the way the Town Greeter interacts with the lands. With Town Greeter, the lands go into your graveyard and then go to your hand. So while it won't trigger specifically Insidious Roots, it will trigger all the adjacent Insidious Roots effect that care about lands or permanent cards leaving your graveyard. So technically, that is a technical upside over Satyr Wayfinder. If you don't like Universes Beyond and want to keep Satyr Wayfinder because it's iconic and from Theros, then by all means, I think keep it. But I think technically, if you are supporting that Insidious Roots deck and you are doing stuff with things leaving the graveyard, then technically I think this is better. Like, my gut is I'm just going to swap this for the time being. But if you're in a larger cube, I think probably 720, you might want both if you have a self-mill deck. That's kind of where I am with Town Greeter, James. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically a Satyr Wayfinder, but I think Satyr Wayfinder is the sort of card that a lot of cubes will want redundancy for. I think it's really important for a lot of the graveyard decks.
I'm open to 2, but I always think like basically I always stop myself adding more graveyard cards, James, because I know that's just what I want to play. So.
Yeah. I think part of the thing I really like about Satyr Wayfinder versus some of the other self-mill effects is that it's a creature, and I think like for stuff like Insidious Roots, stuff like spider spawning, if you're doing that, you do just run into the issue that a bunch of the good ways to mill yourselves are not creatures, and therefore it can be tough to just end up with the creature count you need to make those cards work. And Satyr Wayfinder just kind of does it all whilst just being a creature. Also, like, is a green creature that taps for Hogak, you know? So I think stuff like that actually does just really matter. So yeah, I think there will be quite a lot of cubes which will just want the second copy of Satyr Wayfinder. Yeah, I think the differences are pretty marginal. Yeah, I guess this triggers a catch for most, but I think mostly
it's incredibly technical. It's incredibly actually.
I think basically if you're running one, look at these 2 cards, decide which one is your favorite, and put that in.
It's Satyr Wayfinder. Satyr Wayfinder makes me feel something. I do not like.
Well, I mean, I'm sure this dude is iconic to someone. It's not me, but
yeah.
I'm sure someone gets flashbacks to Final Fantasy 76 or something from this.
I'm not sure. I think this is Final Fantasy 1, according to in the bottom left-hand corner of the card. I think it's Final Fantasy 1. So
okay, cool.
Shout out to the OGs out there. All right. The next card, though, James, I'm incredibly high on. What do you think about this card? Talk to us about Summon Bahamut.
Yeah, I think this one's cool. Summon Bahamut is 9 generic mana for a enchantment creature saga dragon. So again, another summon. It's a 9/9 with flying. Has 4 chapters. The first 2 chapters are the same. They're destroy up to 1 target non-land permanent. The third chapter is draw 2 cards. And the 4th chapter is Mega Flare. This creature deals damage equal to the total mana value of other permanents you control to each opponent. So, first things first, this is 9 mana. We're mostly here to cheat this into play. We're not so much about casting this on the fair.
Unless it's channel, we're not casting this.
Exactly, yeah. But you do get quite a lot for your 9 mana. Firstly, it's a 9/9 flyer. 9/9 flyer is really big. It's big enough that it doesn't really matter that you have to sack this after 4 chapters, because it will get to attack twice most of the time. That will be enough. The first 2 chapters are fine. So I'm assuming we're treating this in phase. We're mostly looking at this as a reanimator target or a channel target, I think, are the two major things here.
I will say, or a show and tell deck. That's where I liked it last time, because in theory you're answering what your opponent's putting in, was my thought of it anyway. But
sure, yeah, show and tell isn't terrible. Part of the issue I have with this as an animate target specifically is that the first 2 chapters say non-land.
And you're a meanie, James.
Well, the thing is, right, if I have my nuts really quick reanimator draw, I want my animate target to actually kind of crush them, And sometimes if it's early, they just won't have a very meaningful thing to target with this. And then if they just kill it, I didn't really get anything. So I think that's a pretty big downside as an animate target. I guess less of an issue is something like show and tell is kind of good because, I'd say it nugs the thing they get. But, there are a lot of powerful things they could put in that have ETBs. But that is something that's not terrible. And it is huge. Like, if they don't kill it, it will kill them. But that's kind of the minimum you expect from a cheat target, right? I think it's fine as a thing to reanimate. I think, I'm kind of in if you're doing Vexa stuff, or if you just want another thing to channel. I quite like this because a lot of the other stuff you can channel isn't great to reanimate. Like the Eldrazi, obviously, you have to do it instant speed, which makes it a lot tougher. So I think if it ticks a couple of different boxes for the configuration of cheat effects you have in your cube, then it could certainly make sense. I think it, obviously it's not on the tier of Archon of Cruelty attracts Gristlebrand. I think if you're looking beyond that, you're looking at how many of the different boxes does it tick of how to cheat this in. I think this is solid to reanimate. I don't love it as a sneak thing. I think
that's fair. Yeah.
Just one removal is you're kind of hoping for a little bit more. Obviously not good to flash. It is good to channel though. So maybe that ticks enough boxes that you can look at it. I think as a pure reanimator target, I think there are still better options beyond that. I think even something like is it Valgavoth from Duskmourn, I think is maybe stronger than this if you're just looking at animates. But again, that doesn't have the channel stuff. So yeah, I think this is reasonable. I think it could find a home. I don't think it's sort of groundbreaking. I think the only new thing it offers you is, again, a reanimator target that's also an enchantment, if you care about that.
I'm a little higher on this than you, but I think that's also because in the power level of cube I'm running, I've cut Archon, Atraxa, and Grizzlebrand just because of game warpingness of those cards. And for me, I think this is quite high up there in terms of the ones I have left. I think I'd rather have this than any Eldrazi outside of the 2 big Emrakuls would be my gut. Just as a big colorless threat, there's definitely room for a couple of those in cube, and I think this is I think this is a card they will be testing in the Mitgo Vintage Cube, and I think it will be fine there. I think it'll be solid. I like this card, and again, I'm a little warped because Archon and Atraxa, as we kind of discussed on our last episode, are kind of for reanimator, kind of quite far above everything else. But then then below that you have Grizzle Daddy, and then there's a big drop off below those. And I think it's enough in that pool of cards that I think it could be considered and should be tested. Yeah, I think it's cool.
Yes, I think it's. I'd agree with that. I think there's a good, healthy mix of cards that you can reanimate below Archon. I think it is very solidly in that mix. Do you want to run this or Atali or Valgavoth? I think none of those choices are unreasonable. You tailor which of these targets you want to include by what else is in your cube, how are you putting them into play, right? And I think this being a channel target is a pretty legit reason to play it.
Yeah, I do also agree with what you said about this is nowhere near as good if you are doing the nuts. If you have the ability to reanimate something big on turn 1, I don't think this gets in your cube for the reason of this does nothing. or apart from being a 9/9, that's still fine. But like, yeah, like if your animated deck is doing it more on like turn 3 to 4, a bit more fairly in quotation marks, then I think this does get a bit better. But yeah,
yeah, that's fair. So fair. I get my
know.
9/9.
my 9-mana mythic that's also going to be £1 million that I have proxied already. Don't worry, it's fine. All right. Next up, we have Lice Hexed. It is 1 white and a blue for a 2/2 legendary creature, Human Rebel Monk. It has prowess, and non-creature spells you cast cost 1 generic list to cast, as well as long as you've cast 2 or more non-creature spells this turn, Lice Hexed has double strike. So I think this is a very cool card. It is very much one for the Spells Matters deck. Like those tend to be Izzet, but you do get a little overlap into Jeskai every so often. We've run Electromancer effects in the past, like your Barals, the effects that will just generically make your non-creature spells or your instant sorceries cost 1 generic less to cast. This is kind of cool because similarly to us, as some of the other cards, it does both the things. It reduces the cost of our spells and it also can win us the game. Like if you cast 2 spells, this is a 4/4 double strike. That's good. That's not that hard in those Spells Matters decks. You also have the threat of activation. Like you can cast your spells after blockers. Being honest, though, I like a lot of the cards we've seen from this set. It's probably one for slightly slower cubes where you can build up to this and just have one big explosive turn. But if you have a Spells Matters section that has other prowess creatures like Monastery Mentor and Swift Spear and the Corey Steel Cutter that James mentioned earlier, I think this could be a cool little test. One last thing I will add is that this does say non-creature spells. So this could secretly be an artifact aggro card as well. Soar's their only blocker, play Bone Splitter and Equip, will win a game of Limited, James. But more here for the spellsy thing. But there is white blue can be artifact aggro as well. So maybe a little overlap card there. But yeah, neat card. I think it's cool.
Yeah, I could see it. I think this is fine in the prowess tempo deck. I think there's a lot of threats that are sort of in this bracket.
Yes, yeah, 3 mana undercosted with prowess.
yeah, and this certainly isn't in like the higher tier of threats for that deck, right? Like, it's not as good. Even if you're like going into white, it's not as good as something like Monastery Mentor, I'd say. Honestly, I don't really believe in the Electromancers in general in those decks, just because the issue those decks have, right, isn't not playing enough spells. It's that people kill the payoffs.
Yes.
And so you really need, when one of your creatures lives, for that creature to be a threat. And the Electromancers aren't a threat, and this one is. So I think that does make it better.
Yeah, exactly. If I was going to run an Electromancer, I'm glad this one kills my opponent. If it lives.
Yeah, for sure. But you do also run to the issue that in the good versions of that deck, so many of your spells cost 1 mana that you don't actually get the discount, right?
That is a very real issue with that, is like most of them cost 1 or like a single color. The ones you want to run, like Lightning Bolt or Path or something like that. Yeah, this doesn't help with.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess where I'm landing on with it is if you're doing like a Jeskai prowess thing in a sort of mid-power level cube, then this is probably a good include. If you're more like, I'm doing blue-red prowess, I wouldn't say, we can splash white for this card because there's like 15 other prowess playoffs that you could just play in blue-red. I don't think it's worth stretching the mana for. But if it already nicely fits into an archetype you have in blue-white or Jeskai, then see running it. I think it's fine.
All right, next up, James. This is a lot of Magic card. What do you think of Emmett Selch?
Sure is. Emmett Selch Unsundered is 1 a blue and a black for a 2/4 legendary creature Elder Wizard at Mythic Rare. It has Vigilance, and whenever Emmett Selch enters or attacks, draw a card, then discard a card. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 14 or more cards in your graveyard, you may transform Emmett Selch. It flips into Hades, Sorcerer of Eld, which is a 6/6 legendary creature avatar with Vigilance. and during your turn, you may play cards from your graveyard. If a card or token would be put into your graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. This is quite a lot for your 3 mana. If you can, obviously busted if you can flip it, but 14 cards is a hell of a lot.
Yes.
I think the way I'm looking at this is that in very high power level cubes, I think you just can't be paying free for your looter, like even if it does all this other stuff. But anywhere outside, like just because I think there are too many great 2 mana ones, you know? Like Malcolm's great, the Paul Creeper's really good. There's a bunch of good options. But anywhere, I think you need to go a little bit down that power level where it's a little bit less emphasis on raw efficiency, and I think this becomes quite good because it's really nice you get your loot on ETB as well. It means even if they kill this, you still got something out of it. If there's a key card you needed to put in your graveyard, you can put it there. So you're not as reliant on it surviving. Plus, 2/4 is just nice stats for this in terms of you will often be able to block with this, and it has vigilance, so that's pretty good upside. You will probably need some removal spells to clear the way. Like 2/4 is just not always going to have a great attack, but you're in Dimir. I imagine you can find a removal spell or two. It even, I guess, digs you for 1. And 4 toughness is just, it's going to be a lot more resistant to removal than most of those other looters, which is pretty nice. Dimir can also be pretty good at fueling its graveyard, so I think there will be games where you flip this, and you basically just win the game if you flip this. I can't imagine not winning a game where I flipped this, because they obviously didn't have a removal spell for it, or you would to be able to flip it because it was flip on upkeep. So then you're just untapping with your whole 14 guard graveyard in your hand. Like I can't imagine losing that game. So yeah, I think there's enough going on here that I'd consider it like basically anywhere outside of the either. I wouldn't consider it empowered cube or the unpowered, but basically maxed out power level otherwise cubes. But I think, anywhere outside of that, I'm kind of in for this card. I think it does a lot of good stuff.
No, 100%. Yeah. This is a slam dunk in my slower cube, just because getting to play with Yorgmoth's Will that's permanent is really sick and cool. Like, I don't have Storm in that cube, and this does seem kind of... Obviously, with Storm, it will be quite good because you can almost storm off over 2 turns. Like, this with the Brain Freeze seems incredibly strong. Like, Brain Freeze mills you, put a bunch of stuff in your graveyard, then you can build up your Storm count nice and big and then Brain Freeze them on the second turn once this is flipped. Like, that seems very strong. But just, like, it's in the colors of Reanimator. Even any kind of self-mill deck with a touch of Reanimator, just... mill a bunch of your deck, flip this, cast your Reanimate straight out of your graveyard, bring something big into play, and win with it. Like that's just the most obvious thing I think you can do with this. But there's just so many cool things that I think this card opens up. And like, if you're in the environment that's slow enough where you can get there and you can flip this, I think this is worth testing because it seems like a very cool, very fun card that is like quite unique. Like again, proxy this one because this one is also probably going to be... Actually, I have no clue. The pre-orders for this set are kind of wild in terms of prices. Wait a couple of weeks, but like this seems like a very cool card that I'm going to proxy, and I think it'll be really fun. But I do agree, like just from a raw efficiency, just the front side just doesn't get there because it'll either be dead before it flips because it's in a higher power level environment, or you'll just never get there because the game won't go that long. I think is the issue with it in higher power level. But like, if you can flip it, or you're playing Commander, I don't know. I think it'd be fun.
Yeah, I will say the flipped version, like the Yogg-Will, I wouldn't be building around making it good when it flips in any way.
Oh, no,
I wouldn't, like in the ways you might think about building around something like a Yogg-Will. Like, you don't need to be like, I think, like storming off from there. You flip it and you like cast your removal spell again, cast your other removal spell again, ban out your graveyard with your counter spell in it, and your opponent concedes the game because they're going to die to your 6/6. I think is mostly what happens when you flip it.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, I don't think this gets into our storm pile, but I think like if there is a Brain Freeze floating around in that cube, I think it could work quite nicely with it, basically. But
I like the idea of Brain Freezing to flip this. I think that's kind of cool.
No, very cool. right, sweet. Yeah, we love this card. All right, but let's keep it going. We haven't actually. This next one's also pretty sweet, to be honest with you. Vivi Ornitier is 1 blue and a red for a 0/3 legendary creature wizard. It has an activated ability for 0 mana to add X mana in any combination of blue and or red, where X is Vivi Ornitier's power. Activate only during your turn and only once each turn. It also has the ability, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put a +1 counter on Vivi Ornitier, and it deals 1 damage to each opponent. So this is a very weird card. My gut is that if this comes out early, it'll be incredibly good and will do a lot. That mana ability will add up very quickly, and it's a lot of mana creation. Like, you cast 3 spells and you get a Black Lotus every turn. That's kind of insane. Like, I think this is much better in Powered Cube, where there is a higher just amount of cheap, good, efficient spells you're going to be putting in your deck. Like, the fact that this turns your Mox into a second Mox is kind of dumb. Like, it is a thing if you have to play it after you've played this. And the pinging, I think, will actually add up enough over time if left unchecked. My worry is that, as we kind of mentioned with some of the other cards, like, if this is a top deck, it will do nothing. No evasion and no power is really bad late game. Also, if this is in the cube where you don't have a bunch of cheap spells, then I think it's also really bad. Like, you want to play this on turn 2, and then on turn 3 go 1-drop, 1-drop, play a 5-drop. That's ideally what you're doing with this. I don't like this if this is just a Llanowar if it's just a Llanowar Elves with extra steps, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think there's certainly a lot of power here, right? Like, this can start producing a lot of mana very, very quickly. I think my issue with it in high power level cubes is just I don't quite know where it fits deck wise.
James. I don't know.
So here's the thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, that is, I agree, like the natural place you kind of want to put it, but like you're like either like a proper dedicated Storm deck or just like a big mana combo deck with like draw 7s and, you know, like the Dream Halls deck theoretically, right? Like that, I would like this sort of effect because it can just add so much mana and it can cast a lot of spells and keep using the mana really well. The issue is, though, right, those decks tend to have almost no creatures in them. And I think we've all had the situation where you're playing against a combo deck and looking at your Flame Slash and your Fatal Push in hand, and then may play a creature, and you're like, oh, thank God I have something to use this on, you know? Because it's quite hard for this card to, like, net mana the turn you play it, right? Like, once you've spent the 3 mana on it, it's hard to then get more than that back in the same turn. So mostly you do need it to survive a turn before it's good. And I think, you know, if this is like one of only a couple of creatures in your deck, they're mostly just going to be able to kill it because they haven't had anything else to point their removal spells at, you know? And honestly, one of the ways those decks do get a big edge is that they are blanking a bunch of their opponent's cards because you have no creatures to kill. And then it doesn't, I think, naturally fit that well in the more like tempo-y prowessy deck because it does start at 0 power and it's 3 mana. And those decks, while they have some card draw, they're not going to make amazing use of having a bunch of mana later in the game, right? In the way the combo decks are. So I think it's... I'm kind of interested in trying it and just seeing what people do with it. But
that is kind of my thought on this.
Yeah, that is my concern in high power level cubes. But I think if you go down a little bit and whether removal's like a little bit less efficient and you maybe have a little bit more breathing room, like this seems like a card for your treat yourself cube to me. It seems like something like that. I think it would be quite a nice fit.
It is probably quite good with spells that you can cast twice, like Flashback and Harmonize and that kind of stuff. Like, it seems quite nice because you're kind of double dipping, you're getting mana on both ends, and like in theory the first way around will help you cast it the second time. Like,
yeah, for sure.
That seems kind of nice. Like, I don't know, maybe they literally designed it after Harmonize and it's almost like they know what they're doing. Maybe hard to say.
I think the thing of having some zeros in your deck is a big deal with this, right? Like, I think they don't have to be Moxen, right? Even just like a Mishra, like the Mishra's Ball or Git Probe, just anything like that is going to go quite a long way.
No, I'd agree. Yeah. See, and that's the one thing with it going like the end goal of this. I think is great in my slower treat yourself cube, but just like that cube just doesn't have that many 1-drops. The curve averages at like 4 and like
right, yeah,
it's,
okay,
it's a lot of
tough.
3s. Like, but yeah, I know like yeah, like the end game of it I think is cool there, but just the actual getting to that point I think might be tricky. But yeah, I don't know. Like I'm open. Like I'm gonna try it in my unpowered vintage to begin with, and then adjust from there because this is a very cool card. I think like it does open up to some cool gameplay.
Yeah, you could do some very explosive stuff with it if you cast some pump spells on it, but I think that might be more of a commander thing maybe than a cube thing.
Yeah. I mean, like there is a red giant growth that is 1 mana make 3 mana. No, 1 mana make 4 mana. That's pretty good.
Exactly. Yeah.
I do like that.
Go into green, you just like become immense this. Make 7 mana. Go from there.
Yeah. It again like it's like a lot of cards in this set. They are cool and unique, and I agree. I'm not sure where this goes, but I'm interested to see what players do with it. Basically.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, our first land though, James. I think we know what to do with this. It seems like a card we've seen before. What do you think of Starting Town?
Yeah, I think this one's pretty good actually. So Starting Town is a land town. It says this land enters tapped unless it's your first, second, or third turn of the game, which is a very weird way of templating for fast lands.
I utterly hate that, but
I don't love it.
It's very arena.
It is very arena, yeah. But basically, it's mostly going to be the same text as your fast lands, right? Your Spire Bluff Canals and whatnot of the world. So untapped early. It can tap to add a colorless, or you can pay 1 life to add 1 mana of any color. So it's like obviously comparable to something like City of Brass, which is always enters untapped, but doesn't have the colorless ability, just pay a life to add a mana of any color. City of Brass mana confidence type lands I've tended to not like in Cube, just because the games you have to play them early, they just deal so much damage to you over the course of that game. You play City of Brass on turn 2, and that's just like gonna deal you 6 damage, right? And that's not acceptable. So, but this having the colorless ability, I think, is really huge. Like that's because you're basically only going to pay the life when you don't have the other sources of that color that you need. And that's going to take this from dealing like 6 or 7 damage to you over the course of a game if you play it early to maybe you can probably only take 2, right? And with that, this then becomes a really powerful land, I think, because it's 5-color land that's untapped early. That's kind of exactly what you want. 5-color lands are really powerful because you get to take them early in the draft, and wherever you end up, they will be useful for your deck. I found that to actually be a really big deal. Just getting to like make a safe pick in a land early and know you're going to get to play it is pretty strong. Most cube games are pretty quick now, so I think untapped early is a lot better than untapped late. I think like a lot of even high power level cubes, I see running stuff like Fabled Passage. I think I like this quite a lot more. That's the one where it's like a fetch land, and the land you fetch is untapped if you have 4 or more lands. I think just having this be untapped early is a big enough deal that I would probably make that swap in a lot of cubes. I could see running. I think this is going to see a play in like a really wide range of cubes. Actually, I expect to see this on the battlefield a lot.
Yeah, I think this gets into any cube that runs rares, and probably most cubes that are breaking land rarity and breaking rarity for the lands as well. Just because this is just really good in like aggro decks, and like I agree, it's probably a staple in most cubes going forward. I said at the start, but I truly hate the wording on this card. It should have just been a fast land tech. It will play exactly the same until the couple of times when it won't, and you'll get unmatched lead, or it'll be like, or you'll forget, or some shit like that. It's a needless change. I don't think they needed to make, and I hope they don't do it more in the future.
Also, like the time it makes a difference is where you've missed a bunch of land drops, and then you find your land, and you're like, this should come in untapped, and it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'd agree. The colourless part might be relevant for like Eldrazi stuff, but we haven't really seen too much of that. If we go back to Zendikar again, and there's a bunch of colourless Eldrazi running around. I mean, it is actually it's pulling up numbers in Legacy, so maybe it's something we'll look at as in an episode at some point. But having another way of making colourless mana might be relevant for some things as well. But yeah, very cool card.
Yeah, for sure. Like we got a bunch of new Eldrazi in MH3, right? Which you do see cropping up.
No, very solid. Yeah. Like City of Brasses are never like your first choice for fixing, but you will take them for fixing. And I've definitely sat there with unable to tap one of my lands for the last couple of turns of the game.
Yeah, for real.
All right, let's move on to our last card of the day. Last up, we have Zanarkand, Ancient Metropolis. It is a land town. This land enters tapped and taps to add a green. But wait, there's more. It is also a sorcery adventure, Lasting Faith. It is 4 green, and it says create a 1/1 colorless hero creature token, put a puzzle counter on it for each land you control. So there is a whole cycle of these in the set. This is the only one we're going to be talking about today. It is adventures on lands. Like with all adventures, getting 2 cards of value on 1 card is good. It's why we like them. So this is a land and a spell. Like as a card type, my gut is that it will play similar to like an MDFC, I want to say. With this particularly early game, it is always just a land. Just play this as a land. Don't try and draw some later. Just play it as a land if you need to make a land drop. Late game, this effectively is going to be a 7/7. That is then our land drop on the next turn. That's quite nice. I think that's fine. I kind of want to compare it. Like it's like a beanstalk giant variant, to be honest with you. Like we also had the dragon from the last set that got you 2 Boris out, which I haven't had a chance to test yet, but I am planning on it. Where I like this is that if you're in a deck that wants to run an 18th land, like a landfall deck or something with Fast Bond or a 4-color Omnath deck, like you want to be running more lands in your deck, but you still need spells to actually do stuff. As a card, I like it, and as a cycle, I do like most of these. If it was in your pool, I think you would definitely run it if you're in green. The main issue is that we only have so many slots in cube, and especially for higher power level cubes, like this is really not a Gaia's Cradle, and it's really not a Beseiju. That's a bit too much competition for me to consider with this, I think. Like, for me, when I'm putting this in my like deck, I'm putting this in a land slot rather than a ramp spot, because it doesn't actually ramp me ahead. Unlike the Beanstalk Giant, if that makes sense. Like it's not ramping me ahead. It is just a land I'm putting in my deck. It's kind of how I'm thinking about it. It's a land with upside rather than a spell that's a land, I think is how I'm considering it.
Yeah, I think when someone told me they were putting adventures on land, I was like, oh, that sounds really, really powerful. And then I sort of read them all, and they're all really expensive. And it's like, oh, actually, it doesn't matter then, right?
They have played it very safe.
Yeah. Just because, right, the upside of an adventure is you get 2 spells, 2 cards, but with these, like, once you've played your 6-drop, how much does having the land drop rolled up for the next turn actually matter, right? Like, it's better than not having it, but there will just be a bunch of games where that's not super relevant. I think everything you said is true. It's totally fine. You would basically never cut it from a green deck, but also, how are you finding room for this? Because I find you can generally afford to have like 1 to 2 non-basic, like single-colored lands for each color, and this is not one of the best ones. And even with like if you look at like the MDFCs in Modern Horizons, right? Like we talked about a bunch of those that are all really solid, and I know about you, I've not put any of them in any of my cubes because there's just not room for them, right?
The only one I have run in the past is the 1 or 2 mana one that is an Undying effect, just because that's kind of cool with pitch elementals.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But like, apart from that, no, I don't think I've run, or none have stayed in for a prolonged amount of time, basically.
Yeah, makes sense. So like, there's nothing wrong with the card, but tough to find spots for these.
I'd agree. I have 2. I have 1 comment and 1 question, James. The comment: when this was a modern legal set, this did not enter tapped. Here's my gut. Second question, which might give it a bit more play. can I both expedition map for this and mystical tutor to get this card?
Oh, yes. Yes, you can. I think so.
That is something. Like, that's a little bit of flexibility that I do like.
I'm not sure you can mystical tutor for this, actually.
Oh, okay.
I think it might just be a land in your deck. Like, I don't think you can mystical tutor for Beanstalk Giant, right?
Oh, is it only a sorcery on the stack or something like that?
I think in your deck it is the adventure. Okay. It doesn't see the adventure when it's in your deck.
That's fair.
In fact, I know this to be true because there was a very weird combo deck based on that where you like Possibility Storm and the only sorcery in your deck was a like Enter the Infinite because you because all your sorceries were adventures. So yeah, you can't mystical for this, but you can expedition map for it.
Okay. So expedition mapping for a creature is for a spell is something. There is a world where like for slower and lower powered level cubes, where just like this cycle could be quite cool. Like especially if you're building a cube from scratch and you like Final Fantasy, then I think these are fine cards to add. And what we're getting again, this kind of comes back to the very the kind of spiel I gave at the start of we're comparing it to like 20,000 or 100,000, however many cards there are. We're comparing it to all the other cards, and just like land slots are particularly difficult to get into in Cube.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, marvelous. So that's going to do it for the episode. James, my takeaway from this set is there's a little bit of everything in this set. It does feel like the last couple of standard sets, which is nice, where basically I think there's like 4 or 5, like I think must tests and a lot of very interesting cards for specific archetypes and for specific decks. Like, is there anything specifically that stands out to you from this set that you're thinking of trying in your powered cube?
Yeah, for powered cube, I think it's definitely Cecil. I think is the one that I will be putting in, and I would be surprised if it didn't stick around for a while. I think that card looks very strong. Outside of that, I'm also interested in Sephiroth, the Blood Artist guy that lets you sack things. I'm interested in Summon Kajata. I think that card's really strong. But yeah, I think there's not a ton of like standout super high power level cards here, but there are a lot of really nice role players, which I think is good. I'm down for sets falling at this power level.
Yeah, it's been a nice base. I'll be honest with you. Yeah, it's been every set since after Modern Horizons 3 have been this nice level of power. Basically, yeah, you can really find cards that work for you. Like for me, yeah, the cards you mentioned, but also like Traveling Chocobo, I'm here for. I think is going to be very solid. Like same with Town Greeter and Summon Bahamut. I think those cards I'm interested in trying. I'm going to try a like one thing I'm thinking of adding is not Sleep Magic, but the other cheap blue removal spell. I should probably
Unable to Scream.
That's it. Yeah. I'm going to be checking the chaff box immediately, see if I've got one ready for Saturday. But yeah, I think that's another cool little thing to try. Yeah, I'll be honest. As someone who doesn't know the most about Final Fantasy, there's a lot of cool cards in the set. They've done it again. They've given me some coolness, and at the end of the day, that's all I wanted. So we love that.
Yeah, for sure. Like I don't understand any of the references here because I've literally never loaded up a Final Fantasy game, but I think a lot of the cards do just work as magic cards, and that's nice. Because I think you do sometimes get with the very top-downy design cards where it's like, I think this is true of some of the cards in the set, mostly ones we haven't talked about today, where it's like, I understand that this is probably a really cool joke for a person who understands the joke, but it doesn't make sense as a magic card. But I think there's lots of them that do work really well as magic cards. And yeah, I think there's some nice additions for Cube, for sure.
Definitely fantastic. All right. Well, James, pleasure, man. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm looking forward. Yeah, as I said, I've already proxied some of these off. We will be playing with them on Saturday. So
nice. We can give it updates on the next episode.
Sounds good. Do make sure you like the podcast. Give us a 5-star review. Tell a friend. All that good stuff. Whatever positive affirmation you can give us, we would greatly appreciate it. Until next time, it's goodbye from me. And it's goodbye from James. And we will see you all soon. Goodbye.